Welcome to The Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Currently, there are more than 20,000 troops in Washington, D.C., and about 7,000 are staying until March to protect President Biden. No past elected president has ever needed so many troops, in addition to the Secret Service. Republican congressmen have issued a letter. The letter requests a briefing on why the National Guard will maintain such a large presence after the inauguration is over. But before the 20th, the Department of Homeland Security clearly stated that it had no reliable information that there would be violence against the presidential transition. There was no violence during the transition of the power. How come all of a sudden there is a threat of violence now? I don't know whether they are referring to the far leftist group Antifa for their past actions of vandalism and looting. If that's the case, it's possible because it's already happened. But aren't they in the mainstream media the ones that insist on calling Antifa's evidently violent actions peaceful and democratic in the past year? The Biden administration apparently does not think the leftist media has anything to do with violence. Their focus has been coming up with excuses to ban different voices. TJ Ducklo, Biden's deputy press secretary, told a news outlet earlier this week, organizations or individuals who traffic in conspiracy theories, propaganda, and lies to spread disinformation will not be tolerated and will work with the White House communication agency to decide how to handle those instances moving forward. The definition of disinformation is unclear. However, from past experience, anything that the mainstream media doesn't like can be labeled as disinformation. If the view is vastly different from theirs, it's probably called a conspiracy theory. Be prepared that the Biden administration will soon only allow media outlets of their choice to attend the press briefings. Maybe Biden's press team found it's impossible to rationalize all the 30-plus executive orders signed within a week of presidency. Maybe the new press team doesn't want Americans to hear any voice of opposition or critical to the administration. Yet, one thing is clear, Trump's press team, including the former president himself, were much more open than their successors in answering every single question in the past 4 years, despite many of which were vicious attacks from the mainstream media. Now, within 1 week in the White House, Biden's administration is already leading a double-standard press environment. How far away is this from communism's censorship of speech? Now, we all know how much the pandemic has hurt Americans and the world, and there are signs that the situation is worsening as we speak. It's been said that the Biden administration is now actively considering new measures that would require people to show proof of testing negative for the CCP virus before traveling on U.S. domestic flights, in addition to requiring that from people who want to enter the United States starting on the 26th. On the 26th, Biden also signed an executive order that specifically prohibits federal documents from using the term China virus when describing it. This name was called out by former President Trump last year when the Chinese Communist Party was desperately trying to shrug off responsibility for the pandemic. The news reported that this executive action is to address racism towards Asian Americans during the pandemic. But if that is truly the reason, why isn't Biden in his administration encouraging people to call it the CCP virus, as it should be, instead of just banning it from being called China virus? Before we move on, I once again would like to make 2 requests. First, our videos are being removed and demonetized, so if you enjoy this show, please consider supporting us. Our donor box link is in the description. And secondly, the censorship continues to be excessively restrictive, and if we get shut down, it would be great, as a safety measure, if you would please sign up for our email list. Okay, let's get back into this. Now, former President Trump has left office. The Chinese Communist Party is becoming more and more bold in its international actions. Right off the bat, just a few hours after President Trump left office, the Chinese Communist Party imposed sanctions on 28 officials of the Trump administrations. China's Xinhua News English Twitter account posted, "Finally, Trump is gone." A record number of military aircraft, at least 28 units, were dispatched to disturb the southwest airspace of Taiwan and show off their power, testing the United States. This happened for 2 consecutive days on January 23rd and 24th. On the 26th, the Chinese Communist Party sent 5 military aircrafts into Taiwan's airspace 5 times. They flew close to U.S. reconnaissance aircraft during that time, which was very dangerous and provocative. The level of arrogance is unprecedented. Also, the Chinese Communist Party is now not shying away from the U.S. fleet when it arrives in the South China Sea. When the U.S. aircraft carrier strike group sailed into the South China Sea on January 23rd and past Wangyin Island on January 25th. Protesting this, the Chinese foreign minister announced that it would conduct military drills in the South China Sea. But it did not announce the exact time or scale of the drills. This has been seen as a pressure test for the Biden administration to see how tough they will be on the Chinese Communist Party. On January 25th, Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping delivered a speech criticizing implicitly the U.S. for resisting the Communist Party's quote-unquote unilateralism policy at the World Economic Forum in Davos. This is yet another way to test Biden. While the CCP is stepping up, showing their teeth, what has Biden and his administration been doing? Banning the use of China virus and calling for patience as a strategy in dealing with China. As we reported earlier, President Biden once mumbled, "I don't know what I'm signing," while still wearing a microphone at the signing location. The person next to him said, "Just sign it." Now, there's another report that shows President Biden spent more than 10 seconds struggling with his pen after signing the executive orders. He tried to put his pen back inside his suit pocket, but couldn't get it in. The National Pulse reports Mike McCormick, who served as a White House stenographer for 16 years, from 2002 to 2018, was interviewed on Bannon's War Room program. He said, "We have seen a 50% decline in Joe Biden's mental capacity. He believes that Biden's cognitive abilities have declined by 50% from 2011. At this time, even Peter Jennings, director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, an Australian think tank, commented she thinks he can exploit a window of opportunity created by COVID-19 and the change of the US president to accelerate China's ambition to take over Taiwan. He warned Australian authorities to be prepared for the tension. How did Biden respond? Everyone already knew his White House spokesperson, Psaki, has revealed that Biden will maintain a strategic patience with the Chinese Communist Party in the coming weeks. Biden's current policy towards the Chinese Communist Party has begun to deviate significantly from the Trump administration's previous way of extreme pressure, peace through might, and no avoidance of war with the Chinese Communist Party. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, in an interview with Fox News on the 26th, responded with backing down would not change the direction and course of the CCP. He said what the CCP needed to see is the cost of their brutality through a fierce resistance and demonstration. Mike Pompeo called on President Biden to solemnly inform the Chinese Communist Party that the United States will not return to the appeasement policies of the past 40 to 50 years. He also stressed that the world must unite in dealing with the Chinese Communist Party and urged the regime to end all forms of its violence. According to a report by the U.S. media Axios, on January 26, Mike Pompeo joined the Hudson Institute, a well-known think tank in Washington, D.C., as a distinguished fellow. He is very popular among conservatives, and his published research findings are very influential in the conservative community. At Hudson Institute, Mike Pompeo will have the opportunity to participate in U.S. political strategy discussions. He will have access to conservative political contributors. In recent years, the Institute has included a focus on Chinese Communist strategy, Chinese Communist spy infiltration, and threats in the Taiwan Strait. Prior to joining the Hudson Institute, the day after President Biden's inauguration on January 21st, Mike Pompeo tweeted a mysterious number of 1,384 days. The American news website The Hill reported that Mike Pompeo is counting down the days to his 2024 presidential campaign. He is one of the dozen Republican presidential candidates who intend to run for president in 2024. If the former President Trump is also running for president in 2024, I wonder if Mike Pompeo will still be interested. Besides, Mike Pompeo, former President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, also expressed a different view of President Biden's strategic patience with the Communist Party. He is taking a similar stance to Mike Pompeo. He called upon the Biden administration to respond aggressively and not delay. The intelligence agency's report did not say to be patient with respect to the Chinese Communist Party, but rather to take action. Under the Biden administration, none of the actions taken by President Biden and leftist Washington politicians have recognized the Chinese Communist Party as the primary threat to national security. Media outlet Nikkei Asia cited sources on January 27th that Apple is accelerating the withdrawal of its industrial chain from China to ramp up production of iPhones and iPads, Macs, and other products in Vietnam and India. This is to accelerate its production diversification. Sources said iPad production will begin in Vietnam as early as the middle of this year, and iPhone production will increase in India. Apple plans to start producing the latest iPhone 12 series and the company's first 5G smartphones as early as this quarter. India is its second largest production base for the iconic device. One supply chain manager said, Apple and many other tech companies all want out of China production capacities, and that has not slowed even though the US has a new president. Apple's moves are part of a larger trend of global tech giants reducing their production dependency on China. China's rising labor cost, the prolonged trade tensions between Washington and Beijing, and the outbreak of the CCP virus that severely disrupted the supply chain have all raised the risk of awareness of depending too heavily on China. Moreover, the US government has initiated a supply chain restructuring campaign and urged tech suppliers to move away from China. Recently, the US Senate voted 55 to 45 in favor of Trump's upcoming impeachment. The Senate still needs to persuade 17 more Republicans to support them in order to make the impeachment go forward. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky commented that Trump's impeachment trial is dead on arrival. Paul also stated that it is significant hypocrisy and double standards when the Democrats are accusing Trump of inciting violence by saying, "Go fight for your country," and he said march peacefully and patriotically, while ignoring Cory Booker's words, "Become a mob. We want you to mop them at restaurants and cause mayhem." And the fact that one of Bernie Sanders' supporters nearly killed Steve Scalise and wounded 3 or 4 others at a baseball game practice. But nobody talked about impeaching Bernie Sanders, and nobody talked about impeaching Cory Booker for his statement, which sounds like an incitement for violence. So it's hypocritical and a double standard that they're putting forward, and they should be called out on it. Senator Rand Paul continued to say, "We should not be shy about calling them out." Well, that's it for today, my friends. Please like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.